Hello, everyone, and welcome to Nerds with Dice. Just a reminder that what you're seeing here is a pre recorded interview. Um, we're really excited to have everyone on. And hi, I am your host, Chancellor of Operations, and founder of Nerds with Dice, Sophia. And today I have with me, um, starting with Renee. Who are you?
Hi, my name is Renee, and I am the founder of Dragons, Dungeons, and Drinks, which is a community in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and maybe soon nationwide. And I am really excited to be here today. Marcus, do you want to share what you do?
Yep. My name is Marcus. I am one of the partners at Dragons Dungeons and Drinks, and I run a lot of the operations. And likewise, what Renee mentioned, right now we're based out of Minneapolis and St. Paul, and looking to expand, hopefully by this time next year.
I always hesitate to share anything about like what cities we're in or how many adventurers we have because as soon as it goes to press or it gets on the internet, it's already outdated because we just have been exploding so much over the last year. When I started, we had 30 people that came to the first event, and now we have over 1,500 people on our mailing list right now, and so it's pretty exciting, but I'm curious if you had any questions to start us off with that you might be curious
Uh,
about.
yeah. I mean, to start, what is Dungeons, Dragons, and Drinks? What do y'all do?
I think the best way to explain what it is sort of by sharing its origin story. I first thought of, I guess, Dragons, Dungeons, and Drinks when I was in Las Vegas visiting my friend Daisy. And she worked at this tiki bar that had like a little D&D night once a week. And I thought to myself, wow, I could bring that back to Minneapolis and not that could be a thing, you know? At the time, I was having a really difficult time in my life. I feel like it was shortly after COVID. And so a lot of my social circles had been disrupted, and sort of even my way of life had been disrupted. And so I realized that there were kind of two big problems at hand. I think the first one is that it's really hard to make friends if you're an adult. At least that's my experience with it. And also that it's really hard to get into Dungeons and Dragons unless you know someone who's into Dungeons and Dragons. And I was like, wow, I think that I could, kill two birds with one stone, so to speak. Not that I go around killing birds. I basically threw together some character sheets. I threw together an adventure and I posted on Facebook and I said, hey, we're gonna try a D&D night at a bar. My friend's a bartender. Like, come on out. And that first night, we had about, like I said, 30 people that came. And as they walked in the door, I handed them the adventure, and I was like, "Who wants to be the GM tonight? Congratulations, you're the GM." you know. And it was really magical because all of the tables seemed to have really good chemistry, and there were some people who were new and some people who were super experienced. And as DD&D kind of took form, it was like an event every month or every other month, and then maybe we'd do a social hour, and just recently we've been doing 8 events a month, and so we are it's just been exploding, and I was really fortunate to bring Marcus on because Marcus has kind of a unique origin story and how he came into DD&D. I don't know. Do you want to share about that, Marcus?
Yeah, definitely. Kind of how I got into DD&D is I actually never had played Dungeons and Dragons before. I was just kind of curious about how to learn how to play and kind of get involved with the community. And luckily, I saw a post on one of the Twin Cities groups where people post games and events that are happening, and I saw Dragons Dungeons and Drinks posted there for the October adventure, and um, out of curiosity, I came and I went and I saw that, what had happened was it was more than just kind of games that were happening, but it was kind of really special to be put into a room with a bunch of strangers and come out at the end with a really fulfilling experience. So shortly after that, I went to Renee and I said, hey, I would really love to be able to help some way that I can. I'm a marketer by trade. So initially, basically said that, I can help you with some of your email stuff. But it kind of has evolved over time to me doing a bit more than that, working with the operations and whatnot. And it's just been really awesome because what Dragons, Dungeons, and Drinks means to me, outside of just the opportunity to get together on a monthly basis and play Dungeons and Dragons with great people, is it's slowly becoming a really ingrained community with a really, really awesome culture. And it's really amazing being a part of the process to build that.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And as I don't play D&D myself, but I do, I play a lot of games. Sometimes the hardest barrier is people don't know what the game is. People don't know how to play, and it's like, look, I know this is a new game, but we're gonna learn together. Or I've run this before. We're gonna knock this out of the park, and we'll get it. So it's really cool that it's started so big with 30 people. That sounds amazing, and has continued to grow from there. I am super curious because most of my work is for actual plays, online community stuff, in terms of tabletop RPGs and all that. And we talk a lot about safety, and we have all kinds of steps and processes for how we do safety. I'm curious how y'all handle safety.
Yeah, that's a really great question. So, I, when I started this, I was like, okay, there got to be rules, right? You got to have rules. You can't have a thing without rules, right? So, what are the rules? And I came up with a short list. And so it eventually became our code of conduct. And so, our code of conduct is be respectful, be kind, share the space, challenge with compassion, be excellent to each other, and if unsure, just ask. Obviously, a lot of those rules are very subjective, but I have found that through pure self selection bias, people who come to our events tend to be incredibly well behaved. I am so grateful and thankful that the people who come and the culture we have created has made a very almost like, I don't want to use the word policing, but like self-contained environment where people feel very comfortable calling each other in and sharing the space together. We have a GM guild of about, I want to say like 150 GMs in our network now, and I have personally spoken with every single GM. I've had a conversation about the expectations we have and the ways that players should be treated. But there's always a chance that something can go wrong, even unintentionally. I was once GMing a game where one player really got excited in their descriptions of what they were doing with their character, and another player got really uncomfortable with it. And so we have some really standard safety tools that you might see in a lot of RPG games, like X cards or rewind, fast forward. So I find that most of the time, anytime there's a safety or just a harder conversation, it's almost always between players rather than with the GM. I find that our GM vetting process has been really great. But I think at the end of the day, Marcus and I play a really heavy hand in these events, and we want to make sure that we understand what everyone's experience is like. And so, getting feedback and doing service recovery, where if we see something on a feedback form, we call them and then have a conversation about those things. That's all really important to us.
Yeah, in terms of safety, I kind of think about it in two specific ways. One is physical safety and making sure that we have a safe space for our community to play in. Luckily, our venue partners have been really great with that. We've been able to create a space, and when I say safe, it doesn't mean just, you know, away from all the riffraff in the outdoors, but a place that people feel like they can talk and they feel comfortable in. And we partnered pretty well with our venue partners to creating a atmosphere that people feel safe in. And then the secondary part is mental safety. And what Raya was mentioning, and I'll echo it here, is that um, one thing that's really important for mental safety is feeling like you're heard. And we take that really seriously. That's why after every adventure, we have anonymous forms that people can fill out and they can give specific feedback towards the dungeon masters or anybody at the table. That way, we can continue to take their feedback and create a safe environment for everybody. Um, and like Renee mentioned, we take service recovery very seriously. And what we mean by service recovery is if we hear that someone had an experience that we really wish that they didn't have, we make sure that we reach out on an individual basis and feel like that they have an opportunity to talk to us about what had happened to ensure that their experience is as good as it can be.
We're also very lucky. I'm a clinical therapist, and so to have a therapist on the leadership team makes it so that there's always someone that's really advocating for mental health and inclusivity. And I mean, everyone on my team does that, but it is nice to actually have like the skill set to like de-escalate an argument or something. Like all of our GM forms just say like wave us over, we will be there to help you. Like we want to make sure our GMs are supported regardless of what situation they might be encountering.
That is amazing. That is actually really awesome. I love it. It does it's surprisingly, maybe not surprisingly, but it's very similar to how we do safety, right? We have safety tools, we lines and veils, we session zeros, we do all these things to try to ensure it. And then at the end of the day, I'm here as your I'm here, the mods are here, chancellors are, the other chancellors on our channel are here. If you absolutely need us, call us in. We'll be there to help. And usually things go fine. We make pretty good tables. We talk. The GMs get to vet their casts and look at everything, and make sure that they got a table they're comfortable with. And it sounds very similar to what y'all are doing and making sure everyone's safe. That is awesome. Um, let's see. How when you're selecting venues, if it's not too into the business model, how do you consider venues? Are there things that you specifically prefer for a venue, stuff like that?
Marcus, do you want to start this one off?
Yeah, definitely. So the kind of a couple of things that we look at in venues is one, making sure that the location is accessible. That's something that's like super important to us is that we're in a location that people feel like they can actually get out to and it serves the community. It kind of is like where it starts at, right? Because if people can't get to the place that you're at and if it's not accessible, it's just going to be harder to get the people into the venue. Second, when we go in there, we always go in with the mind of how can we use this space to best serve our players. So when we go in there, we usually take a look at the space. We kind of imagine what it would look like with tables spaced out a certain way, and then we communicate that with the owners right away to make sure that like our vision aligns with what they can do. And then actually what we do usually before we run events is we'll have like a social hour at a venue too to see kind of, how the venue interacts with our patrons and how our patrons feel about the space and kind of just get kind of a warm vibe going so we can see exactly how the space is being received. Um, with kind of how we've been operating a lot, we've been getting a lot of requests of people going into our venues. We were really lucky that our flagship location, Brewhaven, we had a mutual connection with one of my coworkers, and we reached out to them, and they have been a very, very great partner of ours. We've really seen both of our groups grow in tandem, which has been really amazing. It's kind of rare when you're able to kind of work in lockstep with that and your interests are super aligned. So when we look to expand outside of the venue, we really look for people that we feel like are a good cultural fit from the top to the bottom. It's like extremely important to us that the people that we partner with, especially at our flagship locations, are really aligned with what the vision is for our company.
Yeah, I will say that I go a lot based on vibes. I'm the vibe person on the team. And so, I think that one thing that's really special about DD&D and also a big responsibility and a big challenge is that it could be someone's first and only experience with a role playing game. And so if it goes sideways or isn't good, then it could possibly turn them off to something that I think is really beautiful. And so, we just did a pilot test where we went to Duluth, Minnesota, which is a few hours north of Minneapolis, to try and host an event in a completely new city, just to see what it might be like to expand. And one of the first things that I did when we were scoping out venues was like checking their Instagram and looking at their website and like trying to see like, you know, do they look like they not only like champion the values that we hold in our code of conduct, but like, do I feel that anyone could feel safe in there, regardless of, their race or gender or background or, just anything like that. I think that it is important that every space we go into has a vibe of inclusivity because that's really what we're all about. And, I think that the other thing that's really important to me is I'm all about relationships. And so to me, if we're going to be working together, we really got to work together. And that means that both of us are looking out for each other's best interests. It's not just my best interest. I think that I'm getting used to, as a new business owner, having to say no to people. And I'm having venues and organizers and all sorts of people reach out to me and be like, hey, do you want to collaborate? And it's like, I would love to, maybe down the road, but right now I'm like super stretched thin. And so, like, picking which venues we partner with, it really has to be, there has to be a culture of mutual respect and that we really are in it to win it. Oh, I think you're on mute. Classic.
God, yeah, no, muted. I was always making sound noises in the background, and then of course I forget. Yeah, no, I mean that is always one of the problems here too. Is like sometimes you just got to say no, right? It happens all across the sort of AP spaces. It's like, yeah, I would love to be a part of your project. I'd love to get to work with you. Um, let's talk in 6 months and see where we're at. Because I'm in three other games here. I got stuff at home. I gotta run all these productions, and let's talk in 6 months. So it's yeah, it can be a hard thing to figure out. What is building community like for you? Um, what happens when people leave your doors? Do you have discords for people to continue conversations in? What is that like for y'all?
Do you want to take this first, Marcus?
Definitely. So, yeah, there's a couple of aspects with community. Yes, we do have a Discord, and the awesome thing about the Discord is like it's really easy to kind of see the culture that's forming in there because there's so many conversations and so many channels happening there that it's just like a really cool place to see people hanging out outside of our events. A couple of other things about community is we also have like a very specific vibe, and I'm using Renee's word vibe here because we like vibes, they are like what run a business for us. You can kind of see them at the events, and not only that, outside of just like our main games, is we always have like meetups and people are meeting up outside of our games. They're making friends at these locations. And we have like a wonderful network of people that have just really volunteered both their skills and their time with us, and it's really amazing because it feels like it's not just something that like we're building, Renee and myself, but it's the community is building themselves up too. um, I think like one of my favorite examples of this is we have a table that plays together all the time called the Usual Suspects. They had not known each other before they played, and they come to every single one of our events, and they are like best friends outside of our Dragons Dungeons and Drinks adventures. I think you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think two of them are dating now.
I,
And it's
I wouldn't be surprised if they were all dating.
yeah, yeah. What would that be? A sextuple? I think six people.
Yeah.
Um, but it's just really awesome being able to kind of like see like the impact that these events are having outside of the 4 hours that we get together. It's pretty incredible. Another story aside that like kind of really blew me away was I was going to the gym one day and I'm stuck in traffic and I was like kind of like getting worked up. I was like, typical road rage type stuff. Oh, I hate this. And then I saw the person who was in front of me. I saw that they had a sticker of ours on their bumper. And then immediately I was like, wow, this is really amazing. Like I can't believe that in the random suburb that I'm located that someone is has like our logo on their car. Um, it was it was kind of like I think it's called Schadenfreude. It was like one of those moments. I'm not sure if I used that word
Yeah. We'll talk about it. No,
right.
no, I think that's so great. And I think that it's been quite an evolution for me personally because, yeah, first night I didn't know anybody who showed up. And then these 30 people showed up, and it's like, okay, well, do you guys want to come back next month? Right. And so then it was 30, and then it was 50, and then it was 80, and then it was 140, and then it was 250. And like, um, I think that one thing that has gone on over the last 2 years is I realized that this is something that's a lot bigger than when I started. I started a D&D Night Navarre, but I will say that as it has grown and as the community has sort of very naturally formed in an organic sort of way, it's become like vaguely like a movement. I feel like I don't want to overstate it, but like I just feel like there is such an energy and such explosive growth to what we're doing here because I know that there are lots of places where you can go and play D&D. You can go online. There's a lot of great games that people are hosting all the hours of the day. You can go to a gaming store. You can go to like a studio like Bad Wolf and like just play like a professional game. But I feel like there are not many spaces in our world where you can just sign up, show up, and play. And like where you can physically go somewhere and someone will greet you at the door and ask you, hey, what's your experience? I think I might know someone you might like to play with. Come on over. And like, sure, some people come in groups, some people come as couples, but a lot of our people come solo. And so for me to have the opportunity to kind of introduce them to people who I think they might like has been really cool and really fun. I always joke, this is a terrible joke, so don't hold it against me, but I always joke that I'm like a nice version of Regina George. I stand there in the cafeteria and I go, okay, so you seem like a power gamer bro, so you're gonna go sit with the power gamer bros, and like you're a sensitive sweetheart, so you're gonna go sit with the sensitive sweethearts. And it always works. Our table chemistry, I think, was rated an 8.5 out of 10. And last time I checked our numbers, our game masters were rated 9 out of 10, which is amazing considering the fact that these are community game masters. These are not people who do this like, I mean, some of them do it professionally, but many of them, this is just their hobby. And they take my adventure guide that I write every month and they put their own spin on it. And then we all come together and they play. And so, speaking on community, there was one other thing I wanted to mention, and it's that there was a really fundamental shift where it kind of went from my thing to our thing. I think about a year in, Marcus had been showing up over and over and over, and I was like, look, dude, I can't afford to pay you. You are essentially an employee. So you're either going to need to stop doing so much or I'm going to need to bring you on as partner and you're going to have to like run this thing with me. And so I brought Marcus on as like co-operator, co-owner, co-partner. And it was suddenly like, oh, now I have someone else that I'm not only like need to check in with, but like need to be accountable to, right? I need to, I maybe can't swipe the credit card as much as I would like to. And so, and then fast forward 6 months after that, I actually brought on a whole leadership team. And so we essentially have a board of directors. And so I have so Marcus is our business barbarian. We have Mitchell, who is our finance fighter. We then have another Mitchell, who is our design druid. And then we have Nicole, who's our progress paladin. And so they each kind of play their own role, whether it's financial forecasting or designing our gaming pieces and products and merch, or helping us scale our business. They each kind of operate in their own little sphere, and together we kind of work as a collective to really advance whatever it is the community is telling us they want.
That sounds amazing, and it really is cool to hear that how sort of just how some of this stuff has come together. Just asking and going, you want to help? Cool, we're here now. We're in this. Now we got a board of directors and we're expanding. That sounds so exciting. um, I want to hear a little about these adventures that you write every month. What is that like?
Yeah, so it's really fun. It's really exhausting, but I basically I write a one-shot adventure every month, and I try to make it so that if you come to all of the adventures in a season, essentially for a year, then you'll notice there's like an overarching plot. It's almost like being in a campaign, but it's not like super in depth. And then if you only if you only came to one event, you would not necessarily have had to gone to a prayer event to enjoy the one shot adventure. I make sure that they are all very different in like theme and tone, and I get to experiment with a lot of different mechanics. I think one of my favorite mechanics was called the dread mechanic, which is used in our episode 9, the Shattered Mask, which is like a galactic grief horror episode. And this dread mechanic was basically based on player actions within the game. The like dread meter goes up or goes down, and then the environment becomes more surreal or more realistic depending upon what's happening. And a lot of GMs said they really like that. But one thing that's really nice is that my GMs actually get to have a huge say in how they run their table. And so it's like I write the adventure, I give them the resources, but then I say, make this your own, as long as like it's vaguely the same thing, do what you want. And that makes it so that it's almost like you live in like a multiverse, right? Where there's a lot of different endings for the same story. Marcus has actually played in quite a few of our adventures. I don't know if you want to speak to any of that.
Yeah, I think one thing that is really awesome about our adventures and how we interact with our GMs is that they're made in a way that you can look at the table and determine what the skill level is and kind of how you think the players are going to play it. Are they going to power game it? Are they going to be a role playing group? And you can definitely take bits and pieces of them and emphasize them so it fits the table really well. Which I think is kind of key at an event like this where table chemistry is so key. And outside of that, they are really tailored at being able to, if you can only make it to one of these, if you can only make it to two of these, you're never going to feel lost. You're going to be able to show up, you're going to have a great time, and you're going to be able to tell all your friends about how much fun you had, and then come to all of ours and figure out the through line between the stories. One thing I've been enjoying about this particular season that we're doing right now is that we're making a pantheon of our own gods and goddesses. And as a lore junkie, it's been really awesome to be able to see how they are interacting with each other. As I'm sure you know, the gods and goddesses in mythology, they can't let well enough be alone. So it's been a lot of fun being able to play that and slowly become from a pawn in the game to a bigger playmaker.
Yeah, but the biggest trick I ever played on my GMs was to have them read the name de Cesare and have to figure out how to pronounce it. So,
Yeah, that is lovely. Um, and I, as someone who loves to drop little Easter eggs in everything I run, I love the idea of how you can play in each game and see the overarching stories and the bigger world, or you can play in one game and not have it affected. I love that. I love. I always have like little restaurant, like little fast food restaurants when I'm running, a more modern game or something. Or the most common one is there's a little energy drink that I it sort of came out happened as a joke in one game and then has been in nearly every game since, and just it's a little fun little Easter egg that I plopped in, so I love that. Um, Trying to think, we got a little bit here, little time left for um, one or two questions, or if there's something else y'all would love to bring up.
hmm, let's see. I think one thing that's really important to talk about is sort of some of the hardest parts about running this. I think that, um, you know, my goal in all of this is to create a space where everyone is welcome and everyone feels like they belong. And there's a lot of like structural and like community and societal barriers to that. The role playing games historically, craft beer and breweries historically, they attract a certain kind of person. And I feel like for a long time, it's been kind of gate kept by, just like certain groups. And I think that when you're trying to build something that is inclusive, you sometimes have to go up against a stereotype and saying like, hey, actually, there are people who are just like you who play D&D, whether you are a 65-year-old grandmother or you've never picked up dice before. I think that one of the things that I'm so grateful for is that we have a very large representation of women, people of other genders, um, LGBTQ identified. And so I think like the most recent numbers we pulled is like possibly 43% of players, which to have that at a public event to me is just like really great. I think something that I'm very keenly aware of and am really trying to brainstorm how to work around for this next year is how to implement some anti-racism into the community that we're in. I think that we've done a really great job of establishing ourselves as a safe space for queer identified folks. But I really want to make sure that people of color, I mean, not only feel welcome, but are also just structurally here, and that like I think if you create spaces that are inclusive, you will get diversity. I think a lot of people operate the opposite way. They're like, well, if we just make sure that it's super diverse, then it'll be inclusive. And I was like, I don't think that's the case. And so I think that a big effort of ours kind of moving forward is to look at how can we, just make sure that we're an open and welcoming space for everyone.
Right? Yeah. And I mean, in both cases, it all has to be, intentional work to make it inclusive and to make it diverse, But I absolutely love to hear that you're thinking about that and making, all of those moves. That is amazing. Um, so I guess my last question, if y'all are okay sharing it, I'd love to hear a moment of queer joy, just kind of fit with our theme of kind of celebrating and raising money today.
Yeah. I don't know, Marcus, did any come to mind for you?
Um, yeah, so this is gonna be a interesting perspective just because I am not queer myself, but my I have family members who are. And I think something that's like been really awesome is I have siblings that are LGBTQ, and it's been really awesome to be able to like connect with them and kind of understand a little bit about the community that they're a part of more than what it's on the surface. I think it's just been like really amazing to be able to not just be a part of this community and like be able to build it up, but be also like having that connection with my family and strengthen that with them. Um, and it's been like really, really awesome to do. And it's been kind of like something that has definitely opened up my perspectives like just a lot. Um, but that's that's what it's been like just a really big impactful part of my life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been really great. I think that it's really hard for me to identify one moment. I think there's a lot of little hundred moments. One thing I will say is that I am a very fluid person. I go by many different names, I go by many different faces and outfits, and I'm someone who has a multiplicity to them. And I think that one thing that has been very healing for me, and I would consider a moment of queer joy, is that I feel like I can show up really unapologetically me in these spaces, and I recognize that that's because like I founded them. I get that. But like still, like there's something to be said about how I don't necessarily need to worry about if I looked one way last event and I look a different way this next event, that I'm going to encounter some sort of problem. And you know, one thing I was so grateful for bringing Marcus on as partner was that, you know, I really felt like I could trust him even though he was not part of the queer community. I believed that I would trust him with any queer adventure that came along our way, and would do so with most like diligence and respect and curiosity and all of those good things. And so you know, we are not inherently a LGBT organization, but it's pretty gay around here. So I think it is. I think it's just a testament to creating safe spaces that people of all different backgrounds can show up, and that's ultimately what brings me joy.
Yeah, and I will, as we just to wrap us up, I will share one for myself, which is recently, because it's still pretty new to me. I added um, more pronouns to the list of pronouns that I like, and I added we. And recently, you know, as making more friends and building more community, I got to have a really good conversation about why I like we and how I like it to be used, because sometimes I don't feel like it gets used for me as much as I would love it to, because it really does, you know, bring me some gender euphoria and stuff. But I got to have that conversation. It was really beautiful, and I loved it. And I just want to thank y'all for coming in and interviewing for this. It's wonderful to have you. Um, do y'all want to, I guess, just sign out, share who you are, if you want to talk about where people can find you, or talk about just where they can find Dungeons and Dragons and drinks? And
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So the best way to get in contact with us is probably through the website. And so the website, at least as of this recording, is dddmn.com. And on that website, you know, if they click the Discord button, they can get on our Discord. If you click the chat button, you talk directly to me. And so we have an email list where we send out information, but honestly, the Discord is the place to be.
well, that is awesome. And I have recently learned that there are more and more people in our little Midwestern area that um, are a part of this community for a long time. I had everybody I knew was like on the East Coast, and I'm recently learning that there's more. So hopefully that they'll see this, love it, and check y'all out as well. Um, y'all will, I'm sure, in a moment hear more about what we're doing, the charity and stuff live. So we will see you next time, and see you not next time for more in a bit. Bye, everyone.
Take care.